Hey team, Coach Jono here. I've been filming for the last few days at Tony Robbins and I wanted to put that in order, but what I've done is I've done a review at the very end, so stick around and check that out. Just got to Olympic Park, walking up now to get into the first day of Tony Robbins, which
Really, I'm here to serve you. This is my 41st year of doing this. I started when I was 3, of course, and
So just finished day 1 of the Tony Robbins Unleash the Power, and we did the fire walk. Which was very exciting. I thought it was going to be, I was like, wow, we're walking on fire. No way. But we all did it. It was amazing. Unfortunately, you do a lot of yelling. A lot of yesing, a lot of yeses. So my voice is jacked. So I apologize for this. But it's 12 o'clock at night. It's about 10 past 12. So I got to go to bed, get up, and do it all again. Amazingly, I was not tired during the day. From 12 o'clock till 12 o'clock. It was only until I left. So that was pretty amazing. So. Alright, so day 2 done. And I just wanted to talk about 2 quick things quickly about day 2. Because I've just been checking my notes, and that's been really helpful to sort of go over the notes and sort of see, because there's lots of things going on. It's like 12 hours, if not more, just info. And now some things I do know. So some things I'm like, oh, I know that, remember that. I do have learned this before, so make sure I remember that. But then there's new stuff. And one of the big things about day 2 was about change, about making change, because we're going to have a big transformation tomorrow. So it's going to be really interesting to see, because today was a lot of prep work to prep us for tomorrow, to sort of get us ready for this transformation. So we're doing a lot of exercises where we find about our passion, all that sort of stuff, and what we love, what we hate, all that sort of stuff, so that we can figure out where we want to go. And then we're going to make this big transformation tomorrow. That's where we're going to go. Things I wanted to talk about were change and momentum. So that's what we talked a lot about. And with change comes momentum, and then with momentum comes continual change. So we want to obviously work with those two. I think that's the biggest thing I took away from day 2. But I'm keen to see tomorrow. So here on day 4, just wanted to step out. I didn't film anything yesterday for my experience. I was just too knackered. So day 4, day 3 was fantastic. It was a big transformation day, but because of that, man, it takes it out of you. Very great day. Tony was there. So I just wanted to talk about that, just because I didn't get a chance to shoot a video because I could barely speak, because there's a lot of screaming going on, and if you can't hear or tell from my voice, it's very hoarse. So day 4, I don't actually know what's in store for day 4, because I really only knew day 1 and day 3, which was fire walking on day 1, transformation on day 3. So I think this is just going to probably wrap it all up, tie it all together, and we'll see how we go. But I just wanted to take a moment to sort of share my experiences with you, because otherwise I probably might not get a chance, because probably today will take it out of me again. I'll be putting this video together later in the week and putting it out to you. And then what I'd really like to do is I'd really like to wrap it up after maybe a week or 2, and sort of have time to digest everything that I've learnt, and maybe talk to some people that were here again, and sort of see how this goes in the real world. Because of course it's all good and well to come to these events, and Tony obviously recommends that, because you get the juice, the secret sauce, the feelings. I'm feeling fucking fantastic. even though I'm tired, even though I'm feeling sick, I'm feeling really good because the energy in there, 8,000 people, you can't replicate that anywhere else other than these types of events. And the problem is you can't come to these every day. Obviously you got to your life takes over sort of thing. So I want to see how I'll go in a few weeks because he says, he's very honest, and Tony says that you come to these events and then you're gonna hit a plateau. So he recommends obviously getting continual coaching and stuff like that, and then obviously coming to these events. He recommends 2 a year, something like this, something like full immersion events. And I've been to plenty of these throughout my time, and I would recommend that as well. Obviously, mine are very much fitness related and all of that good gear, but this one is very much life. So that's the good thing about these. But just wanted to share that, and I'll hopefully have an opportunity to wrap it up today and sort of go through my notes. If not, I'll do it later in the week and then put all the videos together, and you'll have a little bit of a story hopefully. But so cool.
How you going, team? Coach Jono here. So for some of you who have been following along, you'll know that I just attended the Unleash Your Power Within with Tony Robbins. So that was Thursday the 13th till Sunday the 16th of September. And what I wanted to do was I just wanted to review what I took away from it. And it's now a Wednesday when I'm filming this. I really wanted to take some time to sort of go over what I learned because the 4 days were, they were jam-packed. So I really needed the time to absorb what I took away from it. I've spoken to a few other people who went to the event, a few of my friends and family about the event, and then I did some reflecting and reading of my notes to really go over it. Now I just wanted to take the time to explain for those that don't know who Tony Robbins is. Tony Robbins is what he likes to call a peak performance coach. He doesn't like the term motivational speaker because he doesn't believe he is that. He's been around since the early 80s, and he's been doing quite a lot of things. So one of the most notable things that he did was in 1983 he learned how to firewalk, and that's something that we actually did in Unleash the Power Within on the Thursday night. We actually walked on fire, which was a very empowering moment, and I had a lot of hesitation about it, and that's of course what he mentioned, prepping us for it, and the whole day was spent prepping us for that specific thing, and it was very symbolic. The walking on fire wasn't to say that, we walked on fire. It was to show that we could, and that when we're scared, that we just need to do it anyway, and then when we have fear, we need to do it anyway. And that was very empowering, and something I'll remember for the rest of my life, I believe, because it was very special. And now, before we really get started and get stuck into it, I just wanted to say that if you haven't gone to a Tony Robbins event, I highly recommend it because it's very powerful. There was 8,000 people at the Unleash Your Power Within event, so having 8,000 people sort of getting into it, it's something quite unique. And until you experience that, it's very hard to sort of understand. Now, of course, there are going to be those people that are going to be very cynical. A lot of those people actually spoke to me over the weekend once they found out I was going there. And of course, there's always going to be people like that. And the analogy that I'll use here is it's like saying sex is bad before you actually even try it. Now, I don't know. Seems pretty silly to me, but you've got to take everything with a grain of salt, of course, and not buy into Tony Robbins being like the next Jesus. And he even mentions that. He even, his Netflix special was called I'm Not Your Guru. He's just trying to help people along their journey and point them in the right direction. He's not claiming to be a messiah. He's not claiming to be anything other than what he is, which is he's helping people, and that's what he believes his purpose is, so he's doing that. Okay, with all that being said, what I wanted to talk about specifically, because there was so much, I wanted to talk about 4 main points. And those 4 main points are that you need to raise your standards. That's something I speak about a lot personally as well, and he really cemented that in, which was fantastic. that you need to celebrate the wins along the way. That's something that I really struggled with, and I'll go more in depth into that. The fears that we face, so the fear of not being enough and the fear of not being loved. And then the fourth point being that simplicity is key. That's something that I try and focus on. So let's break that all down now. So he talked about raising your standards. He talked about if you raised your standards in your life, what would that mean to you and how would that affect your life? And as anyone that has followed me for a little bit would know, that I talk about standards. I talk about things like making your bed and having that as your standard. And something that I learned from the military was, raising your standards. And he used a story that he learnt through his coaching with when he spoke to Marines. And he spoke to this general after he gave this speech to about 5,000 Marines, and they said, this Marine was like, oh wow, that was really fantastic. I've heard a lot of motivational speakers, but like that was the best I've ever heard. And it was all about raising your standards. And this general in the Marines was talking about when Marines leave the Marine Corps, that I think he said something about 80 to 90% of them become unfit, become unemployed, lose their standards. And it's because that proximity is power. When they're in the Marines, they're constantly around people, high achieving people, so their standards are very high. But of course, once they leave that, their standards slowly diminish. And I can attest to this. Once I left the army, my standards did lax. They very much went downhill. Obviously, the most common thing was I stopped shaving. I wasn't as fit as I was in the running aspect. I was still fit in certain aspects. I was doing CrossFit, but I definitely wasn't as fit as what I was, because obviously fitness is a big thing. My self-discipline wasn't probably as good. I was getting up late. My room was untidy. My diet wasn't squared away. Certain things like that. So it's taken me the past 4 years to really get back to that. And I would never say that I am at an army standard, because I don't want to be at that standard. But I'm at a comfortable standard that I am comfortable with. I'm always trying to push that. And I always recommend that people push that. So things like making your bed, ensuring that you have a high level of fitness, ensuring that your room is clean, those types of things, because those are the things that we can control. And then even if you have a bad day at work, you can come home and your room's clean, your bed is made, and you feel a sense of achievement because you've worked out. So that's something very easily that we can all achieve. Point number 2 was celebrating the wins. Now this is something that I personally have struggled with. So throughout the weekend on day 3, we did an exercise where we had to think of some great achievements that we have done throughout our life. And I really struggled with this because I personally see myself as someone that's just sort of cruised through life, that's sort of pretty medium, pretty average, just got the average score at school, was never the greatest sports person, did all right, had my moments, and then when I joined the army, same thing, I was never the greatest soldier, again, had my moments, but I was, just always sort of middle ground, sort of the middle of the bell curve. And so when they said, think of moments that where you've achieved something, I had to really think about it, and I was probably really hard on myself, going, oh, was that really an achievement? Does that count? And the really only things I could think of were trekking to base camp, and then obviously doing my 4 years in the army. And so on Tuesday, what I actually did was I wrote down a list, and I'm going to continue this list, and I'm going to speak to my parents about it, and continually look for things to celebrate the wins. Now, this isn't to, be like, oh, I got 8th place in a race when I was 6th. Definitely not. But it's to give myself a little bit of a pat on the back for when I have done well. And so that when I know that I have done well, what did I do? So that I can then replicate that. Because if I failed in the past, I want to do the opposite of that. And if I've achieved in the past, I want to focus on that. So that's what I took away from the celebrating the wins. The next part was something very close to home, which was the fear. Fear of not being enough and the fear of not being loved. Tony Robbins believes that is why all humans do anything, because we will do something because we have a fear of not being enough or a fear of not being loved. Now, I can definitely attest to this. It's something that I do struggle with. And of course, with social media, this is definitely enhanced. There's always this feeling of being inadequate because you see social media. And of course, that is its own beast, and you've got to really make sure that you're not looking at that as your North Star. But it can be you can very easily get caught up in that. So this is something that you really need to grasp, and this is something I'm going to work on. Because we have that fear, we're not living up to our parents, we're not living up to our siblings, we're not living up to our peers. And then, of course, the biggest one is we're not living up to ourselves. So we fear that we're not enough ourselves. We fear that we won't be loved, and that's something that is very close to home to me, and I'm sure many of you might feel that way as well. So that's just something that I took away from it, and I'm going to be very mindful of that moving forward. So that's something that I took away from it. And then the fourth point, which was that simplicity is key. Now, I like to think of myself as quite a simple person, and with my coaching style, I try to do less. I've talked about less is more on my Facebook Lives, and I've talked about all those types of things. And I think that's something that we can all do a little bit better, is live a little bit more simply and not overcomplicate things. This is something that I do find myself doing every now and then, and it is a challenge to not always do it. It's very hard to, always ensure that we're not overcomplicating things, because I think personally, this is just me personally, I think that if I complicate it, it'll make it easier to understand. If that's complicated, that's why I can't achieve it. If it's complicated, that's why it's hard for me to do, and then when I do it, it'll just magically work. But it's often the simplest things that give us the greatest fulfillment and actually work the best. So that is the 4 points that I took away from Tony Robbins. And again, I want to say it again. If you haven't been, I highly recommend it. You've probably seen some of his stuff online. You may have read of one of his books or listened to some of his podcasts. It is something to be held, seeing Tony Robbins live. He really brings it. It's really amazing. And everyone that was there was jumping for joy, was totally into it. And I'm still on that post-Tony high. I've spoken to quite a few people who are still on that high. And, I'm really driven at the moment to really push forward. And that's why I wanted to make this video, because I wanted to get that out there and tell people about it, because I wanted them to live their best life and live fulfilled. So, that's why I recommend it. And even if you're critical, maybe you think, is this real? Sounds like bullshit to me. Hey, just try it. Just try it. What have you got to lose? I'm pretty sure he has a money back guarantee that if you don't enjoy it on the first day, you get your money back. So, what have you got to lose other than your time? So just try it, team. Just try it.